Every neighborhood has its unseen heroes, the folks whose quiet, everyday lives ripple out and just change everything. Welcome to This Explainer, where today I'm sharing a deeply personal story. It's the story of a man who altered the course of my own family's history forever, even though he had no idea he was doing it. There is no need to make noise. That was Don Ernesto's humble, quiet thought on the very morning of his retirement. Seriously, he didn't want a parade. He didn't tell a single soul. It was his absolute last day on the job, yet he decided to approach it with the exact same quiet dignity he'd shown for decades. It really sets this intimate, almost whispered tone for the story we're diving into today. The guardian of Route 27, observing the unseen lives of the city. Let's put this into perspective. 38 years. That is the sheer magnitude of this man's dedication. For nearly 4 decades, Don Ernesto was behind that wheel, every single morning rolling in at 5 o'clock sharp. He always had this flawless uniform, a hot cup of coffee, and a tired but incredibly sincere smile. He'd greet everyone with a "Good morning, young one," even the folks whose hair had already turned gray. Just 38 years of absolute unwavering dedication.
And it's a pretty remarkable contrast, isn't it? On one hand, you have this monumental, lifelong service, literally a lifetime dedicated to the daily routine of keeping a city moving. But on the other hand, his choice for his final day was, well, no goodbyes at all. A final day without a single goodbye. He intentionally kept his retirement a total secret because he believed his duty was simply to serve, not to be celebrated.
So during that final secret ride, he paid really close attention to the little things he'd normally just take for granted. He quietly watched over the small lives and stories around him. The schoolgirl who was always forgetting something in her uniform, the completely exhausted bricklayer catching some sleep after his shift, or the grieving woman making her routine Thursday trip to the cemetery with flowers. He was deeply, intimately connected to the rhythm of our community's unseen lives. A journey in the rain, desperation, and an unexpected grace.
Now, this is where my own life violently collides with his final shift. I boarded his bus at the very last stop in an absolute state of panic. I was just 17 years old, totally frantic, my hands physically shaking as I desperately checked my empty pockets. I didn't have a single coin on me. I was stammering, apologizing over and over, promising I'd pay the fare tomorrow. I stepped onto that bus with absolutely zero money and a heart that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds.
But Don Ernesto? He didn't yell at me. He didn't kick me off the bus. He just looked at me through that rearview mirror and offered me this profound grace instead of rejection. He simply said, "Get on, son. Sometimes one needs to be believed." I thanked him, with wet eyes, and quickly moved to the back. It was this instant of pure, unfiltered empathy that I am going to carry with me for the rest of my life.
So about half an hour passed, the bus was moving steadily through this really soft, gentle rain, and inside, right there in the back seat, I was completely overwhelmed. Just a teenager crying silently, completely crushed by the heavy reality of where I was actually headed, but also so deeply moved by the kindness of a total stranger who was allowing me to get there. And Don Ernesto, he noticed. He saw this young guy crying quietly as the miles just rolled by.
My grandfather's debt, when the past catches up to the present.
When the route finally came to an end, I knew I had to approach him. I had to confess the real reason for my panic. I was in a desperate rush to the hospital because my mother was in critical condition. I told them I had rushed out the door so incredibly fast that I completely forgot my wallet. And I confessed that if he hadn't shown me mercy, if he hadn't let me on that bus, I wouldn't have made it in time to see her. Don Ernesto just stood there and listened in complete silence. And then I reached into my pocket and pulled out an old, worn-out photograph. I looked at the picture, then I looked right back at him, and I asked, "Are you Ernesto Ramirez?" Well, he frowned. He looked entirely confused and cautiously said, "Yes, why?" He had absolutely no clue how our family histories were about to collide. I just smiled at him through my tears and shared my grandfather's life motto, "Never forget good men." I explained that my grandfather used to talk about him all the time. I revealed that, years and years ago, Ernesto had actually saved my grandfather's life. It was late one night, no one else would stop, but Ernesto pulled over and gave him a free ride to the hospital. It's just this incredible generational ripple effect. Think about it. In the past, a young Ernesto saves my grandfather's life with a free ride.
Then, in the present, an aging Ernesto, on his very last day on the job, lets a desperate, completely broke grandson ride his bus. This single act of goodness compounded over time, essentially saving my family twice.
The ripple effect of kindness, changing the world one silent act at a time.
When I finally told him exactly who I was, the old man, he just didn't know how to respond. He had this massive lump in his throat, his eyes completely filled with tears, and his old, weathered hands just gripped the steering wheel so tightly. In that quiet little moment on an empty bus, the immense weight of what he had done all those years ago finally washed over him.
Later that night, when he parked his bus at the terminal for the very last time, he understood something truly profound. Most people will never ever know how a simple act of goodness changes a life, but that doesn't mean it doesn't change the world. So think about your own life for a second. Who are the Don Ernestos silently moving through your daily routine? And maybe more importantly, how might your own invisible acts of kindness be altering the course of someone else's world right now?